Hello all, welcome to Docker Basics to Brilliance course. My name is Kastro Kiran. In the last video, we have understood a couple of Docker file keywords which are required in order to write a Docker file. In this video, we are going to talk about the last part of how to write a Docker file, which is part 4 of writing the Docker file. In this particular video, we are going to talk about 4 main keywords that are required in order to write a Docker file. Let me first list the keywords, whatever we are going to discuss in this particular video. So the first keyword that we are going to discuss in this video is known as entry point. This is the first keyword that we are going to discuss. Once after discussing the entry point keyword, then we are going to discuss another keyword which is known as user keyword. User is the another keyword that we are going to talk. And then we are also going to talk another keyword which is known as expose. And finally, we'll also be talking about one last keyword, which is known as volume keyword. Apart from these 4 keywords, there is also one additional keyword that I'm going to talk, which is known as maintainer keyword, So we'll be understanding what is the importance of each one of these keywords, and we'll also be seeing how to work with these keywords as well. So the first keyword that we are going to discuss is known as entry point. Entry point instructions, entry point instructions will be created or will be executed while creating the container. Entry point instructions will be executed while creating the container. If you remember, we have talked about one keyword which is known as CMD keyword. We have talked about that keyword which is known as CMD keyword. So when CMD instructions will get executed, CMD instructions will also get executed while creating the container. Remember that CMD instructions and entry point instructions, both of these instructions will be executed while creating the container itself. But the difference between the entry point keyword and the CMD keyword is CMD instructions will also get executed while creating the container, but CMD instructions can be override. CMD instructions can be override, whereas entry point instructions, entry point instructions cannot be override. Cannot be override. What does it mean by cannot be override? Override in the sense we cannot give multiple things at the same time, or you cannot overwrite the data. Let's say you have kept some data inside the Docker file, or you have kept some data as an entry point instructions. That data you cannot overwrite. But whereas the CMD instructions data can be overwritten. Both entry point and CMD instructions will be executed while creating the container. The difference between the entry point keyword and the CMD keyword is entry point instructions cannot be overwritten. Entry point instructions cannot be overwritten. But whereas CMD instructions can be overwritten. CMD instructions can be override. That's the simple difference between the entry point and the CMD keyword. Now, what is the syntax for entry point? The syntax for entry point keyword is entry point and then open the square brackets. Inside the square brackets, whatever you want to execute, you need to write that. Suppose, let's say I'm going to write a simple thing like this: echo space, this is Docker Basics to Brilliance course. I'm just writing this one. This is Docker Basics to Brilliance course. Basics to Brilliance course. Like this, you can write the content, whatever you want, inside the entry point. Now, can you override this data? It's not possible. Why? You are using entry point. But when you use, instead of entry point, if you are using CMD, is it possible to override the existing data? Yes, it is possible to override the existing data. Let's see how to work with this one practically. If you see the Docker images, there are a couple of Docker images that we have been creating, and then Docker PS to know the list of running containers. Currently, I don't have any containers. And Docker PS-A, you can see a couple of containers are available, but they are in the exited state. Can you delete a container? Yes. Can you delete the unwanted images? Yes. How will you delete? Docker system prune-a. Docker system prune-a. When you do this, what will happen? Whatever the unused containers, and unused images are available, they all will get deleted. But currently I don't want to do that. So that's the command if you want to delete the entire things. Now, if you do ls, you can see the Docker file is available. This is the same Docker file that I have been using from the day one of understanding writing a Docker file. Right. Let me clear the screen and let me execute ls. Now, let me go inside the Docker file. Click enter. You can see there are a couple of instructions which I have already written. Okay, there are a couple of instructions which I have already written. Now, at the end, what I will do is I will write entry point instruction. Now, let me press I to go to the insert mode and then come to the next line. And here I'm writing the instruction which is known as entry point. Okay, which is known as entry point. Entry point, and then open the square brackets, echo. I want to echo the things. What I want to echo, let's say this is, okay, this is Docker basics to brilliance codes. Okay, this is Docker basics to brilliance codes by Kastro. Like this, I have written some content and then close the square brackets. That's done. Okay, close the square brackets. That's done. Now, I will come out of the file. How will you come out of the file? Press escape :WQ to save and quit the file. Now, can I build the Docker image? Yes. How will you build the Docker image? Docker build -f. This is another way of building the Docker file. Okay, Docker build -f space the Docker file name. What is the name of the Docker file? Docker file space -t. Okay, space -t. -t represents tag. Let's say I'll give the image name as prime version 4 or prime version 5. I'll give. Okay, prime : version 5 space dot. What does dot represents? Consider the current working directory. Okay, consider the current working directory. So let me click enter so that the Docker file is getting built. Okay, the Docker file and the Docker image is getting built. Now, can I see the list of Docker images? Yes. So how will you see the list of Docker images? Docker images is the command. Now, can you see prime : version 5? When it got created, 13 seconds ago, it got created. What is the size of the file? 487 MB. What is the size of, what is image ID? Image ID is this one. Like this, you can create the Docker file. Okay, firstly, what I have done, I have written the entry point instruction. Let me give that in the notes also. Cat space Docker file. I'm going to copy this entire thing and then I'm going to paste it in the notes as well. So this particular thing, you can use it while practicing. Why? First, what you have to do, you have to go into the Docker file that you have created, vi space Docker file. Once you do that, paste the entire content, whatever you are seeing here, and then press escape. Okay, press escape and then :WQ. Why :WQ? To save and quit the file. Once you save and quit the file, what is the next thing that you have to do? You need to build the image. Okay, you need to build the image. So to build the image, we have different commands. Now I'm showing you the another command, which is Docker build -f space image name. Sorry, file name. What is Docker file name? Docker file name. Let me give something like this. Docker file name. Whatever the name of the Docker file that you are giving, you give the Docker file name. And then space -t. What does -t represents? Tag, image tag. And then give any image name of your convenience and then space dot. Once you give this, what will happen? The image will get built. Okay, the image will get built. So if you want to verify, okay, to verify the image, we have the command Docker images. Okay, to verify the command or to verify the creation of images, we can have this command which is known as Docker images. When you execute, what will happen? You should see the image created. Okay, you should see the image created. Right. Now, by using this image, can I run the image? Can I run the image? Right. How will you run the image? To run the image. To run the image, we have this command which is known as Docker run space image name. So can we run the image? Yes. How will you run? First, let me see what is the name of the image. You can see prime : version 5 is the name of the image. Now I want to run this image. Okay, I want to run the image called prime version 5 image. How will you run? The command is Docker run space image name. What is the image name? prime colon version 5. Okay, prime colon version 5. So let me click enter. Now you can see the entry point instruction is executed. This is the entry point instruction which I have written. If you see here, echo, this is Docker basics to brilliance codes by Kastro. Is it executing or not? Once when I run the image, is it executing the entry point instruction or not? Yes. So that's how you can work with the entry point instruction. Okay, that is how you can work with the entry point instruction. So now let's talk about how to work with another keyword, which is known as a user keyword. Okay, which is known as user keyword. Now, what will we do by using the keyword called user? We can set, we can set a username, or we can set an username for an image or a container. Let's say I want to set an username for image, or I want to set an username for container. So if you want to set an user for the image or user for the container or for both, then we are going to use this instruction, which is known as a user keyword instruction. Okay. For example, if I want to execute some commands with a particular user, then we are going to use the keyword which is known as a user keyword. Okay. Then we are going to use the keyword which is known as user keyword. Now here, the syntax for user keyword will be looking in this way, syntax. So the syntax is user space username. You give whatever username that you want, that will get created. Okay, that will get created and it will get executed. The commands will get executed, or the images or containers will get created based upon the user name, whatever you are giving here. Okay, whatever we are giving here. Let's see how to create an user inside the Docker file and how to execute the commands by being that particular user. That's what we are going to see. Currently, I am there in the mobile XM and we have the Docker file, that is cat space Docker file. You can see there is some content inside the Docker file. Now, what I will do is, instead of using the same old Docker file, I will create a new Docker file so that we can have the difference between the old Docker file and new Docker file. And here, the base image in the old Docker file, I have used the base image as Ubuntu image. Now, I will try to use another type of image, which is known as a Python image. Okay, which is known as a Python image. Let's see how to work with this one. So let me write the Docker file here. So first, let's create the Docker file, vi space Docker file. Once you do this one, just write the instructions, whatever I'm going to use. Let's say I want to get the base image as a Python base image. Python specific version I want as a base image. Now, if you want to get the base image, what is the syntax for that? We are going to use from keyword, from space Python. Let's say I want to use Python 3.9 version, Python 3.9 hyphen slim. This is basically the base image of Python. If I am giving Python colon 3.9 hyphen slim, what does it mean? It is going to look for this base image in the Docker registry. And if that image is available, it is going to pull that image into my local system. That is my EC2 instance where Docker is installed. So that's what from keyword represents. We have already know that. And then I am going to use another keyword, which is known as a workdir. Okay, I'm going to use another keyword, which is known as workdir. Why I am using workdir? Let's say I want to set the working directory in a container. Okay, I want to set the working directory in a container. Let's say I will have default one working directory, which is known as app working directory. Okay, I will have one default working directory in the container, which is known as a /app. So directly what will happen? It will take me inside this /app directory. Okay, it will take me inside this /app directory. Now, what does workdir represents? If you want to go inside a specific directory, then we will use workdir. And we have already seen that whatever instructions that you are writing after workdir, where they are going to get executed, whatever the directory that you have given here, in that directory path only, all the instructions will get executed. Now, suppose, let's say I will use another keyword, which is known as copy keyword. Let's say I want to copy the current directory contents into the container that is the path called /app path. So what I'll give dot. Okay, dot. What does dot represents? Whatever the content that is available in the current directory. First dot represents whatever content that is available in the current directory, it is going to take into another directory, which is known as a slash app directory. That's what dot dot represents. Okay, that's what dot dot represents. Now, can I create an user? What is the ultimate use of working with user instruction? We can set an user name for an image or container. Now, can I set the username? Yes. How will you set the username? In order to set the username, we are going to use a command which is known as a run command. Okay, we are going to use a command called run command. Now, why I am using run command? I want to first create an user. Okay, I want to first create an user. So in order to create the user, I am going to use a run keyword and then space user add. User add is the command. Okay, user add space hyphen m. Okay, space hyphen m, and then give the username. Whatever name that you want, you can give. Suppose, let's say I'm going to give the username as app user. You can give any name. In the place of app user, you can give any name. Now, by using run instruction, what I am doing, I am adding one user. I am creating one user. What is the name of the user? App user. Okay, in the place of app user, you can give whatever you want. Right. Now, I want to switch to the user. Okay, I want to switch to this particular user. How will I switch to this particular user? By using the user keyword. Okay, by using the user keyword. User space whatever name that you have given here. Okay, whatever name that you have given here, the same name you should give here also. Okay, the same name you should give here also. Now, what will happen when you do this? It will switch to this particular user. Okay, it will switch to this particular user. Once after it switches to this particular user, let's say I want to run one CMD instruction. Okay, I want to run one CMD instruction. CMD space, I'm going to give in this way. Let's say I'm using Python. So Python, okay, I'm using Python as a base image. Python space, comma, space. Let's say I want to create one file. Okay, I want to create one file. And I will call that file name as app.py. Okay, app.py. So what I am doing here, by using CMD instruction, okay, by using CMD instruction, I am trying to run a file which is called as app.py file. Okay, I am going to use, by using CMD instruction, I am going to run a file which is called as app.py file. If you want to run the file called app.py, you need Python. So that's why I'm mentioning Python. Suppose, let's say here you want to create a Java file. You give app.java, and here you should give Java. Okay, you should give Java. Like that, you have to mention. Okay, suppose what currently I'm doing, I am creating the app.py file. Okay, app.py file. Now, what CMD instruction will do, it will run the app.py file when the container launches. Okay, it will run the app.py file when the container launches or when the container starts. Let me give the comments for each command so that you will be having an idea what exactly we are doing here. So here what I am doing, I am using official Python image. Okay, I'm getting official Python image from the Docker Hub. Okay, from the Docker Hub. This is what I'm getting here. And then the next one, workdir. What does workdir represents? I am setting the, okay, I'm setting the working directory. Okay, setting the working directory in the container. I'm setting the working directory inside the container. Copy dot dot. What does it represents? Copy the, okay, I'm copying the content. Okay, copying the content from current working directory. Okay, copying the content from current working directory to which one? Into the container. Okay, copying the content from current working directory into the, okay, into the container at which directory? Slash app directory. Okay, slash app directory. Right. And then the next keyword is run keyword. What I am doing with run, here I am creating a user. Okay, I am creating a user. So creating an user with the name app user. This is my user. You can give any name. Instead of app user, you can give any name. So by using run keyword, I am creating an user with the name app user. And then user space slash app user. Now what I am doing with this one, I am switching to, okay, I am switching to SWITCHING. I am switching to what user? I'm switching to app user. Okay, switching to app user. That's what I'm doing with user keyword. And finally, I am using CMD instruction. By using CMD instruction, what I am trying to do, I am trying to run the app.py file. Okay, I'm trying to run the app.py file when the container launches. Okay, if you remember, CMD instructions will get executed when the container gets created. Okay, CMD instructions will get executed when the container gets created. Like this, I am writing the Docker file. Okay, like this, I am writing the Docker file. Now, currently, do we have this file called app.py file? In my mobile exam, if you see here, let me clear the screen. If you do ls, can you see the app.py file here? No, there is no app.py file. So what we have to do, first we have to go and create the app.py file. Okay, first we have to go and create the app.py file. Instead of directly creating the app.py file, what I will do is I will create a separate directory. Okay, I'll create a separate directory where I'm going to deploy the Python application, that is app.py file I'm going to do. Okay, inside a specific directory. So far, whatever we are doing outside of a specific directory. Okay, we did not created any directory and all. Now, what I am trying to do, I will create one directory. Okay, I'll create one directory. Inside the directory, I will create a Docker file. Okay, inside the directory, I will create the Docker file. Inside the Docker file, I'll keep the content. And then I will build the image and I will run the container. Let's see how to do that. So what I'm doing, I have the Docker file that is readily available. Once you have the Docker file, okay, let's say some Docker file. Okay, I'm keeping this as a heading, Docker file. So now what I'm doing, instead of running, let me write that. Instead of running the Docker file outside, okay, instead of running the Docker file outside, I will create, this is just for a change. Okay, instead of doing everything in the same location, I am just creating a directory here. I will create a specific directory. Okay, I'll create a specific directory, and inside the directory, okay, and inside the directory, I will create the Docker file. Okay, I'll create the Docker file, and then I will build the Docker image using the Docker file, and then I will create the container, or I will run the container. This is what we are going to do. Okay, and along with this, we also have to create. Okay, we also have to create, which file we have to create? App.py file. Okay, app.py file with some content inside it. Okay, with some content inside it. Why I'm creating app.py file? Because I am running this app.py file only. Whatever name that you are giving here, with the same name you should create a file. Okay, with the same name you should create a file. Right. So now, firstly, how to create a directory? Mkdir is the command. Let's say I'll give the directory name as my Docker app. Okay, my Docker app. And then I will switch to the directory cd space my Docker app. This is my directory name. You can give any name here. I'm switching, change directory. CD represents change directory. Once after switching to the directory, okay, once after switching to the directory, I will create a Docker file. Okay, create a Docker file. How will you create a Docker file? vi space Docker file. Okay, vi space Docker file. Once you do this, paste the above Docker file content. Okay, paste the above Docker file content. Once you do this, what you can do, press escape and then :wq to save and quit the file. Okay, to save and come out of the file. Once after you do this, okay, once after you do this, what else we can do? Let's see. Okay, first let me do all these things. So mkdir, okay, mkdir space, what is the directory name? My space Docker space application. Right, I have created. Now, if you do ls, you can see the Docker, the directory that we have created. Let me switch into the directory cd space my Docker app. That's done. Now, what I have to do, I have to create a Docker file. Inside this directory, is there any content available? No. Let me show you that. ls, nothing is visible. But Docker file is available where outside of this directory. Inside this directory, do we have any files? No. So can I create one more Docker file with the same name like this? Yes, we can do that because we are creating inside a separate directory. Vi space Docker file. Okay, Vi space Docker file. Click enter and you are there inside the directory. Press I to go to the insert mode and then copy the content whatever I have given here. Okay, copy the content whatever I have given here. Once you do this, what you can do, you can run the Docker file. Okay, you can run the Docker file. So before running the Docker file, what I'll do is I will delete all these comments. It's not required here. So I will delete all these comments. Right. So this is the content that is available. Okay. Now what I will do, I will come out of the file. Press escape :WQ. That's done. Okay, that's done. Now, can I see the content inside the Docker file? Yes. Cat space Docker file. Okay, cat space Docker file. That's done. Now, if you can verify, you can see the first instruction is from instruction, that is Python base image will get pulled. Okay, from where? From the Docker hub. And then workdir/app. It will switch to this particular directory. And then it will copy the content, whatever is there in the current working directory, to this particular path. That is what copy ... represents. And then run instruction. I am creating a user called app user by using run instruction. And then I am switching to the user called app user, whatever I have created here. And then I am creating a file which is known as app.py file. Okay, app.py file, where by using which programming language I'm creating this file? By using Python. Okay, by using Python, right? So now what we will do is let us create this file called app.py file. Currently, do we have the app.py file? Let me show you. ls. You can see only Docker file is there. App.py file is not there. So vi space app.py. Whatever name that you have given in the Docker file, with the same name you should create. Okay, and then click enter. Now let's say I'll go to the insert mode and I will give a simple Python instruction, print, and then write some content. Okay, write some content. Let's say this is Docker basics to brilliance course. Okay, this is Docker basics to brilliance course by Kastro. You can write any content, whatever you want. Here, I'm just writing the content, whatever I need. So close that and then close it. That's done. Now, what should happen? Whenever I run the Docker image and the Docker container, this content I should be able to see. Let's verify that. So come out of the file, escape :WQ. That's done. I have created the file. Okay, let me write that step here also. Vi space. Once you do this, what you should do? Vi space app.py and then write some content. Let me give the same content, cat app.py, and this is the syntax that you have to use to write the Python code. Here I have just written a simple line. Right, I have done this. Once you do this, again press escape and then :WQ. Okay, :WQ. That's done. Now, can I build the image? Yes. How will you build the image? To build the image, okay, to build the image, what is the command to build the image? Docker build, okay, Docker build -t represents a tag, and then give some name to the image. Let's say my Docker app. I'm giving the name to the image. Okay, any name you can give here. Instead of giving my Docker app, you can give any name. Space dot. That's how you can build the Docker image. Okay, that's how you can build the Docker image. Once the image is built, verify whether the image is created or not. Docker images. Once you do this, run the container. Okay, to run the container. Okay, to run the container. How will you run the container? Docker run space -rm space the image name. What is the image name? My Docker app. Okay, my Docker app, because that is the image that I have created. Right. Once you do this, what should happen? You should see, okay, you should see the content written inside the app.py file. We should see that. Then only it is successful. Let's verify that. So currently, let me clear the screen. Cat space app.py. When I execute when I run the container, I should see this particular content. We will verify whether that will be happening or not. Right. So first, what I will do, I will build the image. So how will you build? Docker build space -t, and then I'm giving the image name. What is my image name? My Docker app space dot. You can give any name in the place of this one. In the place of this one, you can give any name. Let me click enter. You can see the image is getting built. Okay, the image is getting built. Once the image is built, what we have to do? We have to verify. You can see image is successfully built. Now, can I verify whether image is created or not? Yes, Docker images. You can see my Docker image, my Docker app image has got successfully created. Now, can I run the container? Yes. How will you run the container? Docker run, okay, Docker run -rm, and then give the image name. What is my image name? My Docker app, and then click enter, so that you should be able to see the content that is written inside the app.py file. Can you see the same content? When I do cat app.py file, you can see this content. When I run the container, am I able to see the same thing or not? Yes. So that's how the user instructions will be used. Okay, that's how user instructions will be used. Right. Now, the next keyword that we are going to talk is known as expose keyword. Okay, expose keyword. Practically, we'll be understanding about this expose keyword in the next session. But let me theoretically tell you the concept of expose keyword. Now, we know that for Tomcat, we have a specific port number. For Jenkins, we have a specific port number. If you want to specify the port number, okay, if you want to specify the port number for a container, then we will use expose keyword. It represents, okay, it represents on which port number, okay, it represents on which port number our container, okay, our container is running. Okay, our container is running. So that's basically the expose. Practically about this one, we will see it in the next session. Okay, so syntax expose space, give the port number. Whatever you want, you give that port number. It can be 8080, 9090, 7070, 48s, 49s, whatever you want, you can give that. That's basically the expose keyword. And the next keyword is known as volume keyword. Okay, the next keyword is known as volume keyword. If you remember, in AWS, we have the concept of EBS volumes, elastic block storage volumes. Similarly, in Docker also, we have the volumes concept, which is known as a Docker volumes. So I am going to make a separate videos on Docker volumes. There, I'll be explaining in detail about how to use this volume keyword. But for time being, let us just conceptually understand how we can use volume keyword. It is used for data storage purposes. Okay, it is used for data storage purposes. Okay, data storage purposes, or you can also call data mounting purposes as well. Okay, data mounting purposes as well. So in Docker, we have the concept called Docker volumes. Just like EBS volumes, we have the concept called Docker volumes. There we are going to discuss in detail about how to work this Docker volumes concept. Okay, so basically, whenever we run the image, container will start and it will generate some data. But when you kill the container, what will happen? You will lose the data. Okay, when you kill the container, you will lose the data. But if you want to store the data permanently, okay, if you want to store the data permanently, then we can use the Docker volume concept. Okay, if you want to store the data permanently, let me write that last line. If you want to, okay, if you want to store the data permanently, okay, if you want to store the data permanently, then we will use Docker volumes concept. Docker volumes concept. Regarding this, we will see practically in the Docker volumes class. Okay, right. By default, all the Docker volumes are stateless containers or stateless volumes. We will see what is meant by stateful and stateless when we are talking about the Docker volumes. So here I am not talking much about the volumes concept. Okay, and the last keyword is known as maintainer keyword. Okay, the last keyword is known as maintainer keyword. What is the importance of this maintainer keyword? It basically represents, okay, it represents the author of Docker file. Okay, the author of Docker file. This author, you can also call it as a maintainer. Who is maintaining the Docker file? That you can use, you can define by using maintainer keyword. What is the syntax for this one? The syntax for this one is maintainer, okay, maintainer space author name, okay, author name space author email. This is what we generally follow in the real-time scenarios. Maintainer, let me write an example here. Maintainer space, let's say the author name is Kastro and author email is castro@gmail.com. Okay, castro@gmail.com. You can specify this in the Docker file itself. Whenever somebody executes the Docker file, they will get to know who is the maintainer of the Docker file. Okay, who is the maintainer of the Docker file. Giving this email ID is completely optional. So these are the keywords that we have discussed so far. Okay, so the first keyword that we have discussed is the user keyword. Before that, we have discussed about entry point and then user doc, and then we have talked about expose keyword and volume and maintainer keyword. So let me list out what are the keywords that we have discussed so far, and these keywords understanding is very much important. Okay, keywords discussed so far. Okay, we are not going to discuss any extra keywords. These keywords are more than sufficient. So the first keyword that we have discussed is a from keyword, and then we have talked about maintainer keyword. Let me write in this way, maintainer keyword, and then we have talked about copy, run keyword, copy, after that add, run keyword, CMD instructions, and then we have also talked about a couple of others such as entry point or work dir, and then env, and then label, and then we have talked about arguments or args, and then we have talked about entry point. After entry point discussion, we have also talked about user and the expose, and finally we have talked about volume. Okay, we have talked about volume. So these are the keywords that are very much required in order to understand or in order to write the Docker file. This is about how to write a Docker file. So I would recommend you to watch all the 4 parts of how to write a Docker file videos so that you will get a clarity on when you are writing the Docker files for the deployment of applications. In the next video, we are going to discuss how to deploy a simple Java-based application, Python-based application, and a couple of other applications. The next 2 to 3 videos will be based on deploying the applications by creating our own Docker files. We'll be seeing those concepts also. Once after seeing how to deploy the applications into the containers, then we are going to practically see how to work with Docker volumes and the rest of the concepts that are available. Thank you.